Welcome to Leading People with me, Jerry Murray. This episode of Leading People is brought to you by Wide Circle, helping you make better talent decisions. To learn more, visit widecircle.eu. That's WIDECIRCLE.eu. Leading People is a podcast which features insightful conversations with leading people about leading people. Yes, that's a play on words. In each episode, you get tips from leading people such as CEOs, HR professionals, authors, and thought leaders on all aspects of leading people, including how to attract, engage, develop, and grow talent to build successful organizations. And we provide insights on how to lead yourself so you can consistently perform at your best. In this episode, I chat with Susan Popula about her new book, The Value of Women at Work. What Susan has to say is not just relevant for women or men, but for everyone. Susan Popula, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Jerry. I very much appreciate you having me here today.
Great. It's nice to meet you. And just for our listeners, you and I have not yet ever had a conversation before. So this is a first for this podcast so far, but that's going to make it even more interesting, both for you and me and for the listeners. So tell us a bit about how you got here, Susan. I mean, what sorts of events in your life have led up to you writing? We're going to talk about your book in a few minutes. So what sorts of events have led up to you writing this book? And was there that sort of magical epiphany moment, or did things just evolve with lots of series of little moments that got you to this part in your career and your life?
I'm going to take you way back to when I was small. Because when I was small, I was always taught by my mum that everyone has value, everyone has worth, everyone has something to offer. It doesn't matter what they do. They might have a job with a lot of responsibility, but it doesn't make them more important than anyone else. And the funny thing is, if anyone doubted that has come to play more than ever in recent times with the pandemic, where we've seen the roles that key workers have had in helping us continue to move forward. So that framed me. For a long time, I wasn't even conscious of how much that played a part in who I am and what I believe. But I've always had the belief everyone has value, everyone has worth. How do we make the most of it? And that's why I talk about human value optimization. Within that context, from when I was small, I used to read a children's writer, inequality, who people of my age, and even some young people are aware of. Key with her is I wanted to write because I read her books. They made me happy. I wanted to make people happy. So I've always had something in me about people's value, how you optimize that, and curiosity about people. I was told when I was young that you can't write for a living. You do that as a hobby. So I found myself meandering through. I did my first degree in political science, and I will possibly go back a bit and say when I was small, I lived in England, South Ockenden in Essex, so a little town, very working class, very community focused. I went on to live for some years in Nigeria, where my parents come from. So I'm British by birth, Nigerian by origin. And so there's that diverse element to who I am. I did my first degree in political science. During the time of doing my degree, I remember my very last lecture was in international relations. And the lecturer said that this is just the beginning of your journey. that be continuously aware of what is going on in the world around me. And with my natural curiosity, that has followed me. Coming back to England, I've done masters in human resources, systems thinking qualification, and a few other things here and there. I've worked primarily in human resources, organization development, but alongside that, I've always had an involvement in the community side of things, very much working with young people, especially young people who have been in the care system and other areas of community as well as in education. So I have that holistic rounded view of the world, traveling to different places as well, which has informed me. I've been very much aware of things that don't seem right and people's place and optimizing that. And I guess in a nutshell, that has informed my thinking along the lines. And then I guess led me to do a bit of writing. Prior to the book that we're going to talk about, the Male Perspectives on the Value of Women at Work, I wrote 2 other books, which were social perspectives. And ultimately, I talk about a mosaic world, developing a mosaic world where everyone is valued.
Okay, well, my copy of the book arrived a few days ago, so I've been delving into the book with great interest, and I can listening to you talk about how you got here and your childhood and your studies, and I can see how that led you to write a book of this nature, because this curiosity factor, this experience and exposure to the international world, different types of people, different communities, etc. So I guess, like everything, these things start off as sort of an idea or a seed, and then eventually they appear as a publication. So what was the thinking that just led up, let's say, within the short period before you said, okay, I'm going to do this now? Was there something that caught your attention, or was it just this whole raft of things that are going on around us where you just felt, I would like to get a perspective on the value of women at work? And in a novel way, you went after a very interesting group of people. You went after men to find out what they thought, which, of course, given the context of a lot of the challenges that women may be facing in the workplace, men are a big part of the context. So let's unpack that and take us through the starting point, and maybe explain how you went about the book, because I won't tell the listeners. You can tell them about all the people that you interviewed. And
Okay. There are 2 things which are separate, but they come together. One of the key organizations that I've worked with in the past is the fire service. And even my master's was on the fire service transformation. And I spoke to a number of different firefighters and leaders on that subject. And what I was told is that firefighters are resistant to change. And I sat down and spoke to one specific firefighter who said to me, we're not against change, we just want change that works. And we want to be a part of the discussion. And we ended up speaking for a couple of hours until they chucked me out. And that made me think, because he said, we don't care about who works with us as long as we can trust them. And so that is, should I say, a very male environment where you would say women and people that are different are not welcome. But he was saying something different. And I've never forgotten that conversation. It's followed me through. At a different level, I remember a number of times I've gone to women's events. I've sat down with women who've expressed their frustrations about the workplace and men not being supportive and not really helping. And so I think just thinking, and it was around the time that the pandemic started, I started thinking of these different things, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice to talk to a number of different men to find out what they think about women and the value that they bring? Or is it true that men just don't believe women have a place? And so that was my thinking that led me to put together an idea of what I wanted to find out from men, as in what value do they believe women bring to the work environment, and what are the barriers that get in their way, both from the perspective of things that women do or don't do, from the perspective of men and other people, and structural barriers that might get in the way of women fulfilling their potential within the work environment.
Yeah, that's great. And if I remember correctly, I think somewhere it's stated, either yourself or in the book, or else it's stated somewhere, that the men were quite honest with you about their thoughts, right? And even if sometimes it wasn't as comfortable to listen to as you might have liked. Maybe just unpack a little bit some of the insights. You talked about your background in systems thinking, so I guess you're pretty good at recognizing patterns. So what sorts of patterns did you start to hear, recurring patterns, recurring themes that seem to sort of were worth bringing out in this book? So maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because I'm sure our listeners are really curious to learn some of those insights you got. In the next part of our conversation, Susan shares 3 key insights that she got from her research. Along the way, she explains how pay inequality can be inadvertently created by women, how your current salary should not affect what you're truly worth, and how men prefer to choose other men for certain roles.
I could break it down into a few key areas. One is around women themselves, the things they do or don't do. The other is about men, their perception and understanding. And then the third is around systems at different levels. So I'll start by talking a bit about women. And I think one of the key things that came out, and I will say these are generalizations, it doesn't apply to every single woman.
No.
And the things that the men say, it's not that every man would say the same thing, because indeed all the men were different. But a key thing that did come out is women at times discount themselves. Men are more likely to put themselves forward while women discount themselves. You could say that that is women being extremely honest, but they discount themselves. And that particularly comes up when it comes to applying for jobs or for promotions. Several of the men said in their experience what they found, and that's men that coach, men that manage, men in different roles, that when you ask, when a job has 10 competencies, if a man sees that job, he might look and think, I've done about 4 of these things before. I'm sure I can do 2 or 3 others. I haven't done, well, I really don't have the experience, expertise, knowledge of the other 2 or 3, if I've got my maths correct. But he'll put himself forward. He'll put himself forward and say what he believes he needs to say to get the job. Women, on the other hand, are less likely to do so. A woman could have done 8 or 9 of the things listed, but if there are 1 or 2 things that she hasn't done in the past, she's more likely to say, I don't meet all the criteria, so I'm not putting myself forward. So that's one of the things that came out consistently. I could also talk through the whole process, the whole journey, because it goes further. When a woman when an offer is being made, if you ask a woman or you tell a woman, this is the salary, let's say it's 40K in whatever currency, she's more likely to say, thank you very much, I appreciate that, and accept the offer. But men are more inclined to say, thank you for that offer. However, I have done my research, or I have looked at information in this place, and I believe it should be 60K. And he might then end up with 50, while she ends up with 40, assuming they're two positions, which means that they enter the organization at a different level, even though they've got the same capabilities. And there are things like that about women putting themselves forward or not putting themselves forward while men do, which, should I say, permeate through the whole journey through in an organization.
And I guess from a systemic point of view, that sets the inequality at the very beginning, at the outset. It kicks in right there, doesn't it? If a man asks for a bit more and gets it.
Yes, it does. And there is the argument that you shouldn't have to ask. And I think you shouldn't have to ask, that it should be that the organization has its processes, its systems, its structure, its salary scales in place and everything else. And things are just done based on what you put in, not what you ask for.
It seems a lot of organizations don't advertise salaries at the outset. Is that true in your experience from HR perspective? So therefore, it's a little bit of an open book. Is that contributing to this?
Yes and no. I think some don't advertise salaries. Some will put a salary range. But there is also something that a lot of organizations do where they'll ask you, well, what's your current salary?
Yeah.
Which should have no relevance. And even when a range is provided, say 40 to 60, you're typically told, we'll put you on 40 unless you ask for more, which men are more likely to do than women. So that is one of the key things that came up through the conversations that permeates through in different forms.
Okay. So this is one of the do's and don'ts, or what women do and do not do then. Is there an example of how men perceive or understand women then that is contributing to some of the challenges that women face?
At a very basic level, the fact that women aren't asking, there is the assumption that, well, the people that are interested, the people that want it, are putting themselves forward, right, without that someone spoke about being more conscious about what they when they're talking to people, when opportunities come up. So the tendency is to go for the obvious. And the obvious is the person that puts themselves forward. Most leaders are men, and the person that speaks the loudest, makes the most noise and says, yes, I can do it. The tendency is to go for that person, as opposed to take the time to say, well, okay, that's an option, but who else is out there, and who else could do the job? So that is something else that men, leaders generally, but specifically men, often do. What another key thing is that a lot of men still judge women, especially young women, on the basis of them, the possibility that they might go on maternity leave and therefore not be available, as opposed to thinking that actually, even if a woman goes on maternity leave, she comes back, she's more likely to be loyal, stay with the organization for the longer term. She's actually learnt some new skills and capabilities. If she can manage the home, she can manage, multitask and do all of those things in any environment. So that's something else. That limited thinking without taking the time to really have the conversation to understand, actually, one, what are the woman's plans, and two, to actually think more holistically that even if she does go on maternity leave, she's still going to come back. And then aligned to that is the flexibility in how people do things.
And how based on the fact that I think you had these conversations in the last year or so, and the COVID thing had emerged during that period, are you seeing any sort of signs that that type of thinking around a woman maybe taking a bit of time out to have her children, that flexibility that goes around that, could change after what we've been through in terms of the working environment we've all been experiencing in the last year and a half?
I think it's too early to say whether the thinking around taking time off for maternity will change. What I hope will change is the thinking around flexibility. I can remember a couple of years before the pandemic speaking to a manager about a young lady who wanted to work from home. Her job allowed for it because it was it was largely administrative, and she wanted to work at home part of the time with her children at home. And the manager was insistent that she couldn't do the job on those bases. Right. But what he didn't realize is that on the odd day when she had worked from home, she would wake up very early in the morning, get work done before her children wake up, work in between, looking after them, work into the evening, so much so that actually her focus wasn't on the number of hours that she worked, but on the outputs, what she was actually achieving, what needed to be done, and what she was achieving. So now, through this year, we've been forced into a situation where a lot of women, men as well, but still predominantly women, have been forced into the position of working from home and looking after children at the same time. And I guess the key question is what we go back to in terms of flexible working.
How does this play out in terms of perceptions of certain types of jobs that women tend to do or are more, let's say, inverted commas, more suited to in terms of this flexibility thing? Did you come across that kind of pattern coming out in terms of perceptions that men had?
There is the perception that there are some roles that women's, should I say, more natural capabilities lead them towards. And I think people said it's not to say that they can't do other things, but a number of the men spoke about the fact that women have a natural, nurturing, caring approach to things. They also tend to look at things more holistically and consider different options. And so with that, there was a thinking that when it comes to certain types of sales roles, customer services, and areas where there's a lot more interaction and engagement, that women do very well in such areas.
And so how does all this impact we're getting back to the theme of this podcast, leading people. How does this affect that whole dynamic in terms of women getting into positions of leadership and then how they approach leading others, including women and men? What did you discover in your conversations around that?
I guess I was surprised at the varying levels of understanding of the men that I spoke to.
Yeah.
As I have said previously, all very well intended, but with different levels of awareness around what it's like for women. And so for me, the book is the beginning of a dialogue, the beginning of conversation. And for me, it says that there's a need for men to become much more aware of women, the dynamics, the challenges, how they engage with people, as opposed to coming from the perspective of, if you're good, you put yourself forward, you know what, you just put yourself forward. And I'm not saying women shouldn't do that, but that there is a need to take more time to get to know people, to understand who they are, what they have to offer, and the barriers that might be in their way in order to enable their progress, which I will emphasize is not just for women's benefit, but is for the benefit of the whole organization if we truly want environments which are based on merit, and we want the diversity of capabilities.
In the final part of our chat, Susan provides valuable tips, not only for women, but also for men, on how to appreciate the value of women at work. And so if you were thinking then in terms of, I think everybody should read the book. I think that's a great thing, and they can buy it on Amazon. I guess they could probably even buy it directly from you. However, in the absence of not having the book in front of them, what sorts of tips emerged for women then? If you could sort of synthesize the top 3 or 4 really kind of advice or tips that women could take from a book like this, in terms of, based on what the men, you interviewed a lot of men, I think. I can't remember how many, but it was quite a lot, right? And they came from all sorts of different walks of life. So there has to be some richness in terms of what their advice would be. So what sort of things would you say to women based on your research now and having these conversations? What's some things that women could start to do tomorrow, particularly those women who see that they should have some career and career progress, and that they have the potential to maybe lead organizations or lead parts of organizations, and they felt maybe a little bit held back or limited because of circumstances, whatever. So what sorts of things can you share now that would inspire women even to go out there?
I would say first and foremost, know yourself as best as you can, because life is a journey. Know what you want and know your worth. Take the time to do that, to really get to know who you are, what you want, what your competencies are, what you uniquely have to offer. Mm-hmm. Spend time with yourself, journal, or whatever it is that you do. Speak to people you know, find out from them what they believe you have to offer. So I can't overemphasize it. Know yourself, know your worth, feel confident in that, so that when things come up, you can put yourself forward. You have the confidence because you have a deep knowledge of that. So I think that's one thing. Something. Don't be afraid to put yourself forward. Mm-hmm. And when you do, as one of my contributors, if not 2, said, ask for more than what you believe you're worth. Mm-hmm. So don't limit yourself. then I would say find allies, not just women. I mean, have women as mentors, have women in your support system. There are men that may be less supportive of women than would be nice, but there are a lot of men out there, which I have discovered, who want to support women, who see their value, who see their worth. And the key is to find them. Hopefully, they'll also find you.
Okay, so that's a couple of really key pieces of advice that women can start to explore for themselves. So know themselves, be prepared to ask for maybe more than you might believe or think you're worth, because, as you say, men do it, and so they get results. And then find mentors, and if you can, find even men who can help guide you and maybe help build those confidences, and maybe help you rehearse those conversations where you need to be able to say, actually, 40,000, yeah, I was actually thinking a bit higher than that, and this is what I had in mind. Right? It is a typical male thing to do. Let's see how far I can get with it, and then see, I'll meet somewhere in the middle. I guess I'll be happy anyway, is the kind of male attitude, isn't it? But there is this principle: if you don't ask, you never get. Sometimes it's
Exactly.
mothers who say that to their sons. I think maybe this might be a contributing factor.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because one of the men that I spoke to did speak about the complexity of women. He said that they're sophisticated, more sophisticated than men, and that mothers should teach their their sons more, so that they have a better understanding and engagement. And I would also say parents have a key role as well, in terms of mothers not just saying that to their sons, but saying it to their daughters, and for fathers to ensure that their daughters have as good an understanding as to how the world of work works as do their sons.
Right. So the other aspect of advice that I have written down here to ask you about might be slightly more, let's say, more intriguing, is what advice would you give men based on what you've heard so far that might help them bring out the best in the women around them in the workplace, or maybe create those opportunities for women? How could men make it possible for women to, you say the value of women at work, how could men make it more possible for women to have this value at work?
Take more time to understand us, to get to know us, to appreciate the value of how we do things differently. Don't think that because women do things in a different manner from men that it's less, but that it adds. And so take that time. I would also challenge men, not in a confrontational manner, but I would say, when you next hear of a conference or a webinar or an event that is taking place, and it's about women, so about the barriers that women face, or how women can progress, or whatever the case may be, don't look at it as something that is just for women, unless it's specifically said this is a woman's only event. But take the time to attend such an event with a key purpose of listening. Not to say what you think. You might ask questions to clarify, but to listen, to understand the world from the prism of women.
Okay, and is there a third piece of advice?
Okay, you want a third one?
Why not have three?
Okay. I'll give it the third one. I would say also is, I'm possibly repeating something I've said earlier, but look at things more holistically. Recognize that the world of work has been built around men, for men. That's not your fault. It's not. I'm not saying that it's a negative to men. but that's history. What history, how things have developed over time. So recognizing that, recognizing how from education to wider society, how it's focused around men and supports men, and that gives men an advantage. There might be disadvantages that men have in other ways, but recognize that, which means that you, as a man, go into a work environment with more of an entitlement than a woman, which makes things easier for you.
Right.
With this in mind, when it comes to opportunities, when it comes for projects and things, don't just go for the obvious person who puts himself forward because he feels the entitlement to do so. Think out of the box and look at the person who hasn't put themselves forward that might have just as much to offer. Look at the structures and processes around you and the biases that might exist within them and see what can be changed.
So that's... Yeah.
And I'll just add to that, because when I talk about the value of women, it's not just me, the men that I spoke to as well, when we speak about the value of women and being able to realize that within the work environment, it's not just for the sake of women, it's for the sake of everyone.
And that's fantastic advice to, let's say, end our conversation on. It's not just about men or women, it's about everyone. That's a true systems thinker there for us. Susan, it's been great to chat with you. How can people, how can people get the book? How can people get in touch with you? What sorts of connecting points can you offer our listeners?
The easiest way to get hold of the book is through Amazon or other book outlets. If you just type in the name of the book, I can also provide the ISBN number, so it should be available on a global basis. To contact me, the best way is if you go to my website, mosaicworld.live, then you can contact me that way.
And I guess there's always LinkedIn as well. If people look you up on LinkedIn, they'll find you there as well.
That is correct.
So the book is The Value of Women at Work. I'll put some references in the show notes on the podcast website. Susan, thanks very much for taking the time out today to share your insights and wisdom with everybody. And I wish you lots of success with the book.
Thank you very much, Jerry. I very much enjoyed talking to you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. You'll find details of what we covered in the show with links, etc. in the show notes. Please share your key takeaways from today's guest and let your friends and colleagues know about the podcast. Oh, and if there's a particular author or leading thinker you'd like me to interview, just get in touch and I'll do my best to get them on the show. This episode was brought to you by Wide Circle, helping you make better talent decisions. To learn more, visit widecircle.eu. That's WIDECIRCLE.eu. Until next time.